What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news, and we have a developing story that I wanted to discuss, so let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. I'm trying to keep the volume low because it is late over here, but we have a late developing story, and this is not a signing by the Detroit Lions. Instead, it is a player that is set to visit the Detroit Lions, according to reports, and he's arguably the biggest free agent that's still on the market, and that is DJ Reader, who it sounds like, according to Jordan Schultz and others, that he is set to visit with the Detroit Lions on Thursday. So I guess as long as he doesn't get signed by then, he's going to be meeting with the Detroit Lions. Now, to quickly answer why he may be meeting with the Lions, number one, it would be a pretty big contract, but also number two, because of the injury history, I think that would make the most sense. He's coming off a torn quad, and if you're going to sign this guy, especially for multiple years, he's been injured in the past as well. I believe he had a quad injury back in 2020 as well, so that's something that you want to get figured out. Definitely the medical side of things. I'm sure the Lions could probably get better answers on that by having him visit the team. Outside of that, though, it's an incredible football player, and I could actually pull it back to my defensive tackle video that I did before free agency popped off, where I was ranking kind of the top defensive tackles that were set to become available. Now, at this time, I did not expect Christian Wilkins to become available, but he did. However, I still have DJ Reader ranked above Christian Wilkins, and if you think I'm lying, trust me, I'm not. I did this ranking before the first day of free agency started, and I ended up, I think, having Christian Wilkins third because Eric Armstead also became available, but number one remained DJ Reader, and it's been that way for a little while for me. Now, I didn't necessarily expect something to happen here with the Lions in Reader, and it may not, just because he's projected to probably at least get a 3-year deal. We know it's going to be a good amount of money, and with where the Lions are, Lee McNeil's extension is going to be looming, obviously St. Brown, Penei Sewell, and we're starting to get to that next spot of guys are going to have to get extensions. I didn't necessarily expect the Lions would want to go long-term deal on the interior defensive line, especially when it looks like you're going to pay a Lee McNeil. With that being said, though, I don't really know where Lee McNeil's cap number comes into play. I expect it to be pretty high because I think he's one of the best in football. Personally, I think he's only on the upswing, but maybe the Lions get it on a better deal than that. I mean, we'll just have to keep an eye on it. With that being said, though, with seeing this news today, I thought this would be a good opportunity to do a short, sweet, quick little video on why I believe that DJ Reader is a perfect fit for the Detroit Lions. I don't want to say perfect. He's an amazing fit for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, there's always little knocks and things of why it's not perfect, but he's an amazing fit for the Detroit Lions, and I want to talk about that a little bit in today's video. We're not going to be breaking down the player in today's video. I have a video where I essentially did that kind of in a short segment. He was number one on my list. Definitely go check out the video, my defensive tackle rankings. I'll throw a little clip in here now. We're going to go with DJ Reader, the nose tackle from the Cincinnati Bengals, lower than Leonard Williams there by a couple mil, 3 years, $15.25 million. And if you're asking why, well, you know, those pressure stats are really darn good for a guy that's known for what he's known for, which is being a run-stuffing nose tackle. 34 pressures. That's a really good stat, especially considering the fact that he had the torn quad at the end of the season. He had, I think, that back in 2020 as well. But when I was just going through and kind of, you know, okay, grade this aspect, grade that aspect, man. To me, what really stood out, first off, run defense. Like, he is a great run defender. Great run. It doesn't mean he's a great run defender, and he was good in like every single category. I didn't really give him downgrades anywhere. I thought he was a great run defender. Very good quickness, good pass rusher. You see it by the numbers. Not elite, but a good pass rusher. Plays with solid balance as well at times. He'll kind of get caught on the ground a little bit. But, man, the flexibility that he also brings is like, what the heck? Like, bro, he makes some ridiculous plays. So starting off with what he's known for first, run defense, where I absolutely love him. Just a lot of flexibility, bend and sink, the ability to sit down, react to offensive line movement, hold his ground at the point of attack, and play that easy gap and a half style, which we saw the Lions play a lot last season. He can play that role specifically seamless. He's also kind of a seamless fit. You just plug him in next to Lee McNeil, you have an big time into your defensive line. I mean, it's big, and he also fixes maybe one of our biggest issues where you get to the goal line, this guy's going to be a complete different maker as well. So he's such an easy fit. But as a run defender, so many things to like. Not perfect, but so many things to like. Leverage into contact. For that 6'3", looks like he's a lot smaller. I love the flexion, the sink, the ability to work over gaps because that's some of the recognition that he also brings well. Real torque that he brings as well. You see kind of on the shoulder when he's able to disengage, kind of just throw guys off him. And he continues to work with some of the lower body flexion that he also brings. Now, we can get a little bit tight. Feet can get a little bit tight. Base can get a little bit tight as well. And that's where sometimes I think you'll see sometimes hit and miss balance. You'll see him on the ground a little bit too often. That specifically shows up as a pass rusher attempting to kind of get upfield specifically, but he has real recovery, and this just shows the athleticism. When he's on the ground, he just pops back up, and it's like, oh, he's going again. He's just a handful to deal with. As a pass rusher, I really like him here. Don't love him, I really like him, but he's got some moves to him. First off, he's got the little rip through that he can win with. He knows how to attack an open half man, so he can kind of rip through, get through half man, at the same time create a little bit of that initial knockback. Who do you want? If I can pick anybody, I'm taking him because it's just such an easy fit for me. The biggest concern would probably be that he's 29 years old on a 3-year deal. So definitely go check out the rest of that video because I talk about him more, show more clips. So if you want to know more about him, that's the place to go. However, here are my reasons. Now, before we get to that, I also do want to announce CD Deuce. You probably have seen it by now. CD Deuce is signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, Lions' former safety, to a 3-year, maximum $33 million deal. And part of me does wonder a little bit, like, is there a chance that the Detroit Lions were actually interested in bringing him back and maybe there was some discussion there? I have no reason to believe that in terms of like a rumor or anything like that. I'm just curious because the fact that Philadelphia went out and got him doesn't surprise me. That was the one team when we were talking about in the chat that would be like, yeah, to me, that would have been the team that would go get CD Deuce and raise his price point because after last season, them seeing what it was like to not have that guy, there was reports coming out weeks before free agency that Philly's like, okay, we miss him. We want to go get him back. But I do wonder a little bit still because that's a pretty big deal. Seemed like you couldn't get a multi-year deal after coming off of an injury last time, and he's essentially coming off of an injury. Now, he did return, so I guess there's that aspect of it, but I'm saying he didn't really play this past season. So the fact that he was able to get a multi-year deal, but also at that price point for 3 seasons, I wonder if there was someone else that was kind of bidding with Philadelphia for this because it feels like that's a pretty high number if there was nobody else that was actually showing that kind of interest. Like it would have been an easier number to get CD Deuce on if you were Philadelphia. But I don't know. Maybe not. I just wonder if the Lions had any kind of interest there. That's based on nothing, though. Just try to throw it out. Wishing the best for CD Deuce, man. I am a fan for life. Count me in, CD Deuce. I'll be rooting for you wherever you go. To me, I believe that he feels the biggest need left in free agency. Now, let me explain. It's easy to argue left guard is a bigger need, which it probably is, right? If the Lions were to trot out a team today, I'd say, okay, we got to go get a left guard. However, based on how free agency is currently set, and also I think once you look into the draft and what I've seen so far from the prospects, I haven't seen them all, of course. From what I've seen so far, I think the Lions' biggest need that they can legitimately still address, specifically in free agency, would be the interior of the defensive line. I also have believed before even today, and we saw Danielle Hunter go sign the 2-year deal and those kind of things take place, that interior defensive line was a much bigger need to potentially look to address than, for example, edge rusher after adding Marcus Davenport, because of the fact that I think the Lions have a lot of their answers currently on the roster. Josh Paschal, Marcus Davenport's going to rotate in and out. He can give you some of that stand-up edge rushing role. He can also put his hand in the dirt and rush the passer and 4-man fronts. Also throw in John Kaminsky now with the pay cut. And then next to that, you'd have Lee McNeil. He's a core piece for the future. Next to that, though, you have a question mark. You have Levi, who is on a final year of his contract, played a little bit last season, showed some flashes as a pass rusher, but we're still trying to obviously get consistent play, and that starts with him being healthy. And then you also have Broderick Martin, who really didn't play last season, was not ready to go, which made sense. He was a developmental prospect, but we don't know where he's going to be this season either. And then next to that, you have Aiden Hutchinson in your 4-man front. And Aiden Hutchinson is obviously a core piece, one of your best players on the team. So the one glaring hole to me there is that interior defensive line. Now, I understand the edge rusher stuff. Not saying the Lions can't add to it. I've been wrong on these things before. I was wrong about linebacker last year. I'll probably be wrong about this as well. But I will say it would not shock me if the Lions did not add another legitimate edge rusher in the entire free agency period. I just don't necessarily buy into that, the fact that they have to do that. Now, they could. We'll have to keep an eye on James Houston. He's an exclusive rights free agent. That's set to be due tomorrow if they want to make something happen there, if they want to end up bringing him back, but that hasn't happened yet as of what I know. These guys got to play somewhere. Josh Paschal has to have a role to step into. Same thing with Kaminsky, Hutchinson. Like, a lot of these roles are filled up, and that Sandbacker role that rotated between James Houston and Derek Barnes, again, I believe that you can get times where you could step Davenport into that spot from what I've seen so far. And obviously, they bring James Houston back. That adds another piece to the puzzle. They could go add a piece to that, but I don't necessarily think that that has to be a monster contract. I've never looked at it that way. I think the Lions, one of the best pressure teams in football statistically this past season, they were a team that needed cornerback first. That's why it was my top need. They've addressed that. That's amazing. But then next up, right now, would be interior defensive line. Number one, because it's way easier to address that right now in free agency. You still have a couple of the top options that are available, but also number two, when I look at the NFL draft, I don't see a lot of clear-cut, no-brainer answers at that position that not only can play the run at a very high level, but can also rush the passer at a very high level that can step in day one and do that, because you're probably going to need a guy that can step in day one to do that. If you get a guy that's just a rotational piece at that spot and you don't address that at all in free agency, you are having a rotational piece and then Broderick Martin forced into a role that he may or may not be ready for, and then who really knows with Levi at this point. That's what your interior is made up of. And if for whatever reason you don't have a Lee McNeil for a game and you just brought in a guy that can stop the run, you have no interior pass rush outside of Levi. And let me also clarify to this point, guys that can stop the run on mid-level to lower-level contracts are pretty scarce right now on the free agent market, just run stoppers. And then you go to the pass rushing side, you see guys like, for example, Grover Stewart, a guy that I like, 3 years, $39 million. He's a good run defender, but he's not a big-time pass rusher. I don't think he's the pass rusher that DJ Reader is. To get back on topic, it's hard to find those guys. They get paid. Right now, you are very thin at that spot, which is why I believe that's the position that you can absolutely address right now in free agency, because the top guys are still in the market. Now, a lot of kind of the middling options have kind of been taken off the board there, so I don't love a ton of those. And again, if the Detroit Lions didn't do this, they're going to have options in the draft. There are guys out there that are good players, but they don't want to pigeonhole themselves into a pick. So this just makes the most sense to me. Obviously, then you have a receiver, which Josh Reynolds is still available. I think he'll end up back here, but it's a kind of a thin group. The draft has loads of that as well. So even if you had a no receiver, you can absolutely address that in the draft. But interior defensive line is one of those spots where, look, it's hard to get a guy that can play the run, rush the passer, and do it on day one, right? When the Lions went out and got Levi at the beginning of the second round, they were attempting to trade into the first round to go get Levi. It's because they understood how difficult it was to find those kind of pieces. They don't grow on trees. There's a reason they rarely ever hit the market, and when they do, it's like, okay, 110 million, we'll do that. These guys just don't become available. Pass rushers are extremely valuable. We know that. But interior pass rushers, when you have those, they're on a different level. Now, I say that in saying this. The next reason I think he'd be an amazing fit is because stylistically, he fits in with ease. There would be no problem of like, okay, how do we put him next to Aleem, or who do we pair him with on the interior? Can he really play? There's none of that issue. He fits into a scheme perfectly. He could play gap and a half defensively. He could play exactly into what you want to do. And as I touched on, the reason that I brought up stopping the run and rushing the passer and why having both, and I'm going to bring up an example, Sheldon Rankins. He was a guy that I had on that top 5 list, but the more and more we go through free agency, the more I think to myself, I shouldn't have had him that high. Here's the reason. I like Sheldon Rankins, but I always felt that it was weird. He would come out on early downs because he's not a very good run defender. He was a much better pass rusher. There's value in that. There is value in that. However, what the Lions have always been based on here is earn the right to rush the passer. Whether that was Todd Walsh when they had it on the wall, or that was last year when he told Lee McNeil, hey, it's great, man. You're slimming down. He's rushing the passer. He's explosive, all these things. You still need to be able to anchor down and stop the run. Like, that's step one. You still have to be able to stop the run for us. That's always been priority, is if you can't stop the run, that's first and foremost for an interior. We got to get to a pass down, because on third down, we can put pass rushers. We can go sub-package, right? We can go to that NASCAR front. But on early downs, you better be able to stop the darn run. The Lions have been really good against the run, but they've done a lot of that schematically. It's part of the reason why goal line defense has been so bad for the Lions against the run, is because a lot of it happens schematically on early downs. So you add this piece, it's a seamless fit with Aleem McNeil, with Levi, with, heck, you could probably put him out there with Broderick Martin because he can still rush a passer. I had graded him out as a good pass rusher and a great run defender, so he still gives you value. He may not be the best pass rusher on the market. I think I can make an argument for Armstead as a better pure pass rusher, as Rankins as a better pure pass rusher, but when you talk about doing both, all of a sudden DJ Reader separates himself. And he does have the nod on Armstead because physically his body type is perfect for this defense. And a guy like Christian Wilkins, who physically his body type would have been fine, great for this defense, the flip side was he wasn't consistently putting that on the field. It was like, okay, I don't love how he's handling double teams for a guy at that size. There was knocks that I had, that's why I didn't have him as high. DJ Reader doesn't really have those knocks to me. Well-rounded, he fits the scheme essentially perfectly, plays with great leverage, a lot of bend, lower body flexibility, which is just incredible when you watch him play the run. He can play over gaps, deal with the zone scheme because of his lateral movement as well. He plays with incredible effort and motor as a pass rusher, and then he's got a little bit of a bag as a pass rusher. Well, rip through, can create half man, creates knockback at the point of attack, and then he has that closing effort. He checks essentially every box that I would be looking for if you're like the ideal interior defensive lineman. He can play with anybody on this roster. He adds pass rush value where if you sign him, you could put him out there on third down. You don't need to, but you could. And if you put him next to Aleem McNeil, now I think you have one of the nastiest duos in football. And now you combine that with a linebacker room that's going to be led by Jack Campbell and Alex, young linebacker room, cornerbacks, which you've already addressed, and two of the best young safeties in football. Your defense all of a sudden just went just shot up to one of the best in football. And when you talk about these teams around the league, you're seeing all these running backs get signed, you got to be able to stop the run. And when you can stop the run, if you could play multiple gaps as an interior defense lineman, it's one of the reasons I think they drafted Broderick Martin. You could start to free up second-level players. Now you could start to deal with mobility a lot better. You don't have to throw as many bodies to the run. So it starts with stopping the run, playing into your defender, attacking aggressively upfield, and then being able to play off of that. DJ Reader schematically is diverse, but he also fits perfectly into what we want to do because Cincinnati did a lot of things similarly. There's a reason that I comped that defensive line to our defensive line before last season. This is the reason why. And then we drafted Broderick Martin. I comped it to saying, hey, this guy hopefully could be our DJ Reader. Now add DJ Reader. The biggest knock that I have for the fit is that he's a little bit on the older side, of course. He has some injuries in the past, which most free agents do, but it's really this aspect. It's the fact that how does that fit in with Broderick Martin's timeline specifically? Not necessarily Levi, because Levi's on a year deal. You add any interior defense lineman, it's going to make it difficult. But Broderick Martin in particular. With that being said, if you had him on a 3-year deal, hey, look, there's probably going to be out in the third year, right? But also on top of that, hey, Broderick, you're going to be a rotational piece, right? And learn from this guy, you're going to be a rotational piece. This guy's still going to need to rotate. On top of that, if he's going to miss time, which he has, someone's got to be able to step in for him. So you have to have depth. Depth is important. You don't just roll in with no injuries on. You can't just change the sliders. So to me, when you look at the free agent market, guard, it's going to be tough to address. I don't think there's many options out there to find your future starter. You might be able to hit on one. There's a potential couple of guys that maybe could, whether that at this time of recording, Dalton Reisner, who I don't love, but maybe there's a chance that with his age, he could become a solid starter. But I think it's clear the Lions are looking for an upgrade. There's a lot of options throughout the draft because of the flexibility. You can draft tackles to play guard. You can draft guards that play guard. You can draft centers that'll slide to guard. There's a lot of flexibility, especially where we sit in the draft, but also throughout the draft. So there's that aspect. And the Lions already pretty much have told themselves they're going to go draft a guard. I think they'll sign another guard, but they're going to draft one because the future answers just aren't there in free agency. They've been basically snatched up, unless you're going to look at a guy like Connor Williams. And I like Connor Williams, but I didn't love him for guard. I like him, I didn't love him for guard. I wanted to. All right, before free agency, I was trying to make a list, and I was trying to talk myself into Connor Williams, and I watched him. I was like, I don't love him for guard. So the answers just really aren't there. That's going to be hit in the draft. So like I said, interior defensive line, this to me makes a ton of sense for both sides. Immediate impact player, and you're talking about a defensive front that essentially isn't really paying anybody. You know, Marcus Davenport on the 1-year deal. Everybody else is basically on the rookie deal. John Kaminsky is now taking a pay cut. You're not really paying anybody, you know? So DJ Reader kind of puts this whole defense glue piece for this defense like he was with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was a glue piece for that defense, and it's hard to find that nose tackle that can play that role. We see it. There's teams that look for it. It's hard to find that piece that can go from 2-eye to 3 technique, that can do both, can win one-on-one, but also really stop the run. Those guys are freaking rare to find. Our new defensive coaches that we've added, they know that because they've worked around guys like this. So to me, it makes a ton of sense for DJ Reader to be a top target for the Detroit Lions. And the final point I'd make, if PFF is accurate, and he was assigned a 3-year, $15 million, somewhere in that range type of deal per season, that's nowhere near what Christian Wilkins got, which I get it because you're betting on upside, but DJ Reader right now as a player, one game, I take DJ Reader all day long. I think he's the better player right now from what I've seen so far. With that, Christian Wilkins down the road could be the better player. That's what you're banking on, but right now, he's the better player. Number 2, if it's a 3-year deal, again, a lot of deals are structured. There's probably going to be setting out in there towards the back end of the deal, so it could essentially work like a 2-year deal, and then you kind of reset where he's at that time. Do we want to extend him? Do we want to keep him around? Do we want to move on? Is it Broderick Martin's time to step up? It could make amazing sense, and it could also fit the salary cap much better than a lot of these other options where you're dropping $110 million on an interior defensive lineman. If they don't add him, I'll understand it. But to me, this move makes a lot more sense than adding a guy like Danielle Hunter because there's a much more obvious fit. It's plug in and play. Dude makes our defense a lot better. Danielle Hunter, he's plug in and play, but now I'm kind of overlapping certain guys that I feel like are going to be big parts of the future. I think Marcus Davenport could really be part of the future when he's healthy. Again, he had ankle injuries last year. It's a messed up season. But with New Orleans, that dude was consistently really good when on the field. I think I would bet he ends up being part of the future. I'd bet that he plays well enough and earns an extension. Could be wrong. That's going to be my early bet on this. But with that, this guy, it's so seamless, it's so smooth, and to me, he's the top free agent on the market. This is the guy that I would be after as well. This would be my favorite move because he would completely change this defense like that, and I think then the Detroit Lions defense would go from last year where it's like, okay, schematically we do some things well, we have nice pieces, to all of a sudden, we are well-rounded as a defense. Big-time safety play, cornerbacks that can play in this league, veteran corner and Carlton Davis, linebacker group that's on the upswing, pass rushers across the board, an interior defensive line that's one of the most fierce in football. If anybody knows the value of interior defensive linemen, trust me, it's Brad Holmes. He was around those LA Ram teams when they continue to add pieces alongside Aaron Donald. It's hard. It's hard to find guys that can play the run and rush the passer, and this is one of those rare pieces that can do that. So to me, I think it makes a ton of sense. I am very excited to see this news. I'm going to leave it right there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll stay tuned for any more news that we get. We'll see if it happens. Thank you, Brad, for watching, and I'm out.